Mike Rolls and Benny P. Welcome to Roll with the Punches.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Tiff. Great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. It's great to have you. You've come highly recommended, like I told you, by one of my.
Very kind. Yeah.
Well, Ben, actually, you weren't mentioned at all. It was Mike that came highly recommended. So
that sounds more like it.
And I can promise you, but from now until the end of our chat, Tiff, I'll be the one that just gets eclipsed by this champion here for sure. So I'll be like, Who was that? Who's that guy? Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, I looked you up, Mike. I looked you up, and I was like, oh, this guy does look real. Yeah, wow, I'd love to speak to him. And then the first thing you said was, oh, actually, I've buddied up with a good mate of mine, Ben, and we're doing this thing together. And all I had to read was the URL of the website address, and I was like, I love them already.
Yeah.
Tell us what you are as a combo.
So as a duo, yeah, well, it makes sense that we are together, legless and blind.
And Mike, what are you?
I'm the legless variety. So
and we're talking in the literal sense, people.
In the literal sense, yeah. So I don't have any of my legs are gone below my knees. So I'm 6'4", and I walk around with 2 minutes. I can be as tall or as short as I want to be. Let's be honest.
He keeps getting taller. Every time he gets a new set of legs, he goes up and up and up.
Yeah. I've got a nephew, Thomas, and he's 19, still growing, I reckon. And he came to me the other day and he says, "Hey, Uncle Mike," he goes, "I'm almost as tall as you." And I said, "Tom, you will never be as tall as me, mate. Because as soon as he gets there, I'll just go back to the prosthesis, jack myself up a few inches, bang, done." So, but I am, tall streak of misery, and two missing below my knees.
Oh, I love it. And Ben, tell us about yourself.
Well, if he's legless, that means I'm blind. There's no prizes for guessing that, but I lost 98% of my eyesight overnight when I was 16 due to a rare genetic syndrome. And
far out.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, that throws a whole heap of different challenges your way, but you come through the other side. And I'm sure we'll get into those stories in a little bit more detail. But I think the thing is, so many people say to me, I know they say to Mike as well, they say, "Oh, Ben, do you have a lot of mates who are blind or have low vision?" And I go, "Oh, not really. I've got a legless mate, but I don't." And they say the same to Mike. They think he's going to have a heap of mates who are amputees, but really, we share this connection because we share the same attitude, the same love for life. We're down to earth. We love having a laugh, and the disabilities are just things that come along with it for the ride.
Yeah, this is just a no bullshit approach with Benny. Gets on with things, and as he said, as you start to sort of delve a little bit deeper into his story and what he's been able to achieve, you are just a couple of guys, some common ground, and we like to have a bit of a laugh, fund our own expense, and we've been able to turn that into a business, and we're able to help people as well, which is a really fantastic thing to be a part of, seeing it grow.
I love it. I love having that kind of humorous angle to things, because it allows us to open up the conversation, doesn't it? Like, absolutely. It allows us to sit here and ask you questions that we're dying to know, but when it's all serious, nobody asks a question, and then it just kind of creates a wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
I find it funny what you said, Ben. It's like expecting, if someone goes bald at 38, that all of a sudden all of their mates need to be bald. I'm bald now. I'm going to go get all bald friends to match. Like, what a weird question 100%. To come up against.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, like, snakes still freak me out. Just the fact that they got no legs doesn't mean that I like snakes anymore, right? That's true.
Oh. Even though they can't bite him because he's got metal legs, I don't know why he's afraid of them.
But I'm strangely drawn to mole rats that can't see. So it's weird. I don't know what it is.
Well, the one thing you guys do have in common is that you both went through this at around 16 for you, Ben, and 18 for you, Mike. So you both lived a life where this wasn't the case and then had to adapt to a really sudden and massive traumatic change. Ben, was it literally overnight?
Yeah, so for me, Tiff, it was sitting up the back of the classroom, thinking I was way cooler than I actually was, because that's where the cool kids sit.
Sounds like me, mate.
and seeing the diagram that the teacher was drawing on the board, and just realising it was this tiny, tiny little bit blurry. And when I say blurry, it was like that feeling that we get when we look at the sun for a split second too long. Then when you look away, it just takes that split second to readjust. And I knew something wasn't quite right. It was just like this mini headache. And I started noticing it more and more around the classroom. I had that gut instinct, that intuition that something wasn't quite right. Turned to my parents and went for some advice there. And Dad was pretty relaxed about the whole situation, telling me not to worry about it. Mum, not so much. She likes to stress out, probably more than we needed to. But
Mums are good at that.
Exactly.
More than we needed to, he says, at sitting there at 98% lacking vision.
So yeah, it was this tiny little bit blurry. And upon Mum hearing about this, she was like, "Look, let's go get it checked out." And we went into hospital. They reassured us that it was no big deal, just going to keep me in overnight for monitoring. And I could still see everything clearly. It was just this tiny mini headache. Woke up the next morning, opened my eyes, looking around the room, and I could hardly see a thing. Everything was blurry. All my central vision was gone. I was holding one hand up in front of my face because I could feel my hands. They were on the ends of my arms, but I couldn't see them. And 2 weeks later, after a heap of testing, we got delivered the news that it was a rare genetic syndrome called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. And I just say the technical term for that is blind. And
thank you.
The doctor said, it's incurable. Ben, you're going to be blind for life.
Fuck. What was that like to hear?
It was pretty crazy. It was a feeling of shock. There was denial, there was confusion, but there was also a heap of adrenaline, because sitting in that room with the doctor, Mum and Dad, Mum burst into tears. It's one of the only times I've ever heard my dad cry. And I put on the brave face. I was like, "Mum, Dad, it's fine. I've only lost my eyesight. It's no big deal. It's not going to matter." I was like, "It's all good. What are you stressing about? Don't cry." And I was trying to be the one that was tough for so long to keep my family, my friends, everyone else who was grieving about what had just happened. I was trying to give them hope and sort of that positivity that everything was going to be okay, even though in the back of my mind and deep down, I had no idea if it was going to be okay or not.
Was that a bit of a coping mechanism, do you reckon? That kind of kept you sane, worrying about making sure other people's reactions were okay?
Yeah, subconsciously, I reckon it definitely was. It was something that I probably didn't consciously think of doing, but you just do it naturally, because you don't like seeing your friends and your family upset, especially when you're the centre point of that upset. So you do whatever you can to keep them up and about and keep them positive. And it was definitely something that helped me cope for a long time, until it all came crashing down.
I spoke to one of my very early guests on this show was James Pitter, and he's legally blind. He swum the English Channel. Apparently you guys are pretty crazy. Oh, do you? Right.
Yeah,
and
great.
Until I spoke to him, it's the little things that we don't think of. Like I send him a Zoom link, and I'm sitting at my computer going, how's he going to check his email? How's it? It's all these little things that you guys do every day where I'm like, how do you you turn the lights on at home when you, of course you don't turn the lights on at home when you don't need to, you're getting around, it's, how do you cross the road? How do you do all these things that we take for granted? Like I said to him, how do you know when your chicken's cooked? It's a pretty important one, that. You've got to make sure your chicken's't in the middle.
You just overcook it. You just cook it for cook it for about 3.5 hours on high. And
that's what I do.
Yeah, I've been eating tough chicken ever since I met Benny. He's actually good. He's all right. I like in the kitchen.
No. I love my cooking, and there's so many good questions, and I'm sure we'll get to so many of them throughout this episode, which will be awesome. But like Siri and I, we're like besties. We've got a love-hate relationship, but we get along great. And she tells me when you email me, she reads out text messages. She and I get through the days and directs me around, whether it's finding somewhere like an address of a building. And the amount of technology out there these days is awesome. Like I can have an app up and point the camera and say, what does this street sign say? And it'll read it straight out. Like the technology that's out there, I think when you don't know and you don't need to know, you just simply don't know. And there's so much stuff out there that can help life just go on as per normal. It's just a different type of normal.
What happens if you're at the grocery store or you're somewhere in public and you get a message from, someone, a partner or someone you've, getting to know, and it's a little, and it's something you probably don't want Siri reading out in the middle of a supermarket. Does that ever happen?
Are you suggesting that I'd get raunchy messages?
Well, look, just saying.
You know what? If nothing else comes of this podcast, you've just given me some absolutely fantastic ideas for future things. So from now on, every message is going to be like, "Hey, handsome, how you going?"
Well, I've got to say, Ben, if you haven't had, obviously you haven't had the pleasure of really knowing, but you're easy on the eyes. You're easy on the eyes. I'm sure
you're not too bad yourself.
You're the first one to bloody realise, I tell you that much.
Yeah, no. But in all honesty, to answer your question, I will generally go around with one earphone or one AirPod in. So I'm keeping that sort of at a fairly private level. I can still hear what's going on in the big wide world, but I can have that privacy. And there's also a setting on my phone called a screen curtain. So when it's talking, I can actually turn the screen off. So say I was back in the days when we could go on public transport, or if you're sitting on an aeroplane or something like that, I don't necessarily know if there's someone next to me, someone looking over my shoulder at what I'm doing, if I'm on a banking app, for instance, and putting in passwords or passcodes and things like that. Whereas I can have the screen curtain on, it's a black screen, but I can listen to what's being said.
Yeah, wow. How interesting. I want to jump over to Mike. Mike, tell me about the leg saga, because this happened in my hometown, so I researched.
Yeah.
You might be able to help us find his legs then.
Yeah, I know. The ongoing joke is that there's always going to be a little piece of me in Hobart.
Oh, God.
Hey, if you're not laughing, you're crying, Tiff. It's true, right?
I don't know what year it was that I know when meningococcal down there got quite rampant at one point. One of my good friends, I was in primary school at the time, and I had to go home and isolate and get a test because her baby brother had been diagnosed with it. Fortunately, he was fine. But when I read that about you, that kind of frightened me a little bit.
Yeah,
I was
2001. So it was quite a while now.
Yeah.
And when we say it sort of runs rampant, there was a bit of a cluster at that time. I don't know whether it's topical because we're talking about a pandemic and COVID and these sorts of things at the moment.
I'm just catastrophizing it because that's in fashion, Mike.
There's like, oh, careful. The next one that's on the loose is meningococcal. It's not like that. But I'd never heard of it, to be honest. And I went over there to have a good time on a footy trip in 2001 with a great bunch of guys in the Southern Footy League. Couldn't wait to get over there. I just turned 18, in March, and then September comes around. We've done well in the footy season, and then we're over there having a good time. But I don't remember anything of the trip. I made it over to Tassie. We stayed at the Rest Point Casino, but my last memory was getting dropped off by my mum to my friend's house, and from there we were going to the airport. And it was literally honestly just like that. It was like, being awake, being conscious, and then it was like someone clicked their fingers, and then I was in this state of gradual wake up in a world of sort of pain and hurt and confusion as to what was going on.
Wow.
And it was actually in the Alfred Hospital when I first sort of grasped that something was wrong. I've been transferred after numerous surgeries in Hobart. I've been transferred over to the Alfred Hospital where they could, treat me a little bit better. They had better facilities, these sorts of things. And I was also gave my family an opportunity to be closer to home and go home and rest as they were coming in and out of the hospital whilst I was sort of fighting for my life on life support. Yeah, but it turns out I was somewhere along the line of that trip, I guess I somehow shared a drink, or maybe I had a random pash with a girl, who knows, or I shared a cigarette.
Attaboy. That's all we do in Tassie.
Probably not, because, you said Ben's easy on the eye. I'm not. So, and one of the best things about him losing his eyesight, he doesn't have to look at this mug all the time. It's true.
It's a blessing I don't take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. That was basically as quick as it was. Like, and then it was woke up and I had tubes and machines and beeping and everything, and I had no idea what had happened. And it was this gradual sort of explanation. Mike, you've been really sick, and then I'd try and process that information, and then it was, Mike, you've been really sick, and you're going to be in hospital for a long time. I had a sheet across my waist, so I was not aware of what surgeries I'd had done, but I did notice on my right hand that 2 of my fingers were gone.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Right, well, I wasn't
hey, you don't have that reaction. And I was like, oh, what? Yuck. Like, what's going on there?
Well, I just didn't expect that. I thought it was all about your legs.
Yeah, no. I lost a couple of digits right in the middle.
Oh, wow.
Which makes it perfect at rock concerts.
I was going to say, that's awesome.
Yeah. 10-pin bowling's a bit of a challenge.
That's the thing. Understandable. You wouldn't be able to play the guitar.
It was going to be a little bit hard for us to go like, legless, blind, 18 fingers... 19 toes, half
a nose. That was also taken away.
It was just getting a little bit long if we went into all of the things.
Yeah, that's our company name. It's Legless Blind, 18 toes, half a nose. Like, goes on forever. It was like, it's just crazy.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that was the news was pretty devastating. They were telling me, and it was such a gradual thing. I'm on so many drugs to manage pain that. Every time the new day would come around and then the doctors are coming around, you've forgotten about what they told you. So they have to keep telling you you've lost your leg below your knee, you've lost most of your left foot, you've lost fingers, you've lost part of your nose. And my weight, and that was externally, all this stuff was happening. And my weight, during that 5.5 weeks in a coma, went from 80 kilograms down to about just under 50 kilos. So I'd literally just wasting away. And I guess the injuries at that point in time, so a lot of internal stuff going on too, because the meningococcal shuts down your entire system through septicemia. You get mass organ failure, bleeds on the brain, those sorts of things. And I guess, if I'm honest, at that time, the amputations and the surgeries I'd had were the least of my concerns. It was more around, am I going to be able to, make it from now until tomorrow? Am I going to be able to make it till next week? What's my life, going to be like in, a month? Am I still going to be even be here in a month? And I remember just getting, infections and setbacks and 1 step forward, 3 steps back the whole time. And over the next sort of 3 months, fighting for, I guess that life and death situation, eventually I got to go to rehab and then it was more about, life's going to be different now. I've got to change the way that I think about things and I've got to learn, how to move on from such a catastrophic circumstance that I'd faced.
Were you angry? What were the emotions?
I think you have a range. I think you'd be lying if you said you didn't have, 50 things running through your head in every given day and you just go from one thing to the other. And I think that you get a little bit desensitized to bad news, I guess, in those early stages. And you do look for, anything to hang your hat on. And there wasn't a lot to hang your hat on that stage, but it was very, very basic in the start. It was having really small goals to begin with. So one of my goals was to be able to sit up without feeling sick and nauseous and almost fainting. So I'd work on that on a daily basis. And then eventually I was able to sit up on the side of the bed, and that was a huge achievement. But then also that's demotivating in itself. And you do get angry and you do get sad because whilst I'm trying to sit on the side of the bed in rehab, all my mates are out partying, hanging out with girls, traveling, living their life, going to uni, and I'm sort of stuck in this rehab ward. So it was this huge roller coaster of emotions. And
so with meningococcal, it's a contagious condition, right?
Yeah. So
is it something that can be passed on? Like if you've shared a drink or done something, is it passed on and some people get a reaction and some don't?
Yeah, my understanding, and as well, I don't want to be quoted on this because I'm not a infectious diseases expert by any stretch.
I think we all are these days, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. Well, you just only have to go on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. You'll find that there's about 1 billion epidemiologists in the world, right? So, which is great. But my understanding is that apparently 20% of the entire population can carry the germ on the back of their throat, and it becomes active at certain times of the year. Wow. And I was, I guess, unlucky enough to be probably tail end of a footy season, drinking and having fun with my mates, potentially being run down. And the year before that, this is again just speculating, I had glandular fever, so maybe my immune system was probably a little bit more susceptible than other people.
Well, that's fascinating. I definitely never knew that. I'm not going to make out with anyone ever again.
Good idea. Good idea.
or just go and get the meningococcal vaccine and just go and kiss everyone you can find. Either or.
I love it. Right, when did you guys meet and how? How did this bromance? Oh, here we go.
You want to tell it, Ben, or should I?
Well, we've got plenty of different versions, but essentially, I just ran into it. Because I couldn't see him coming.
I'm like, watch where you're going, dickhead.
And he couldn't get out of the way because he had no legs.
That's it. No. So we got connected through a mutual friend, mutual mentor, and we were both in Melbourne, both starting to get into speaking in schools and corporates, and this guy said, look, I know both of you. You don't know each other, but I reckon you get along all right. So we hooked up for a meeting, and Mike said, mate, let's catch up for a coffee. I've got a table out the front. You'll see me. I've got no legs. I said, mate, I won't see you. But look,
I wasn't well versed with blinders back then, okay? So, in my defence,
hey, you learn something new every day.
See me.
But so we caught up, and ever since then, like I said earlier on, we just connected because we're both down to earth. We both take the piss out of each other, but most of all, we also sort of share the same philosophies and are passionate about the same things, which is about sort of living life to the fullest, building resilience and getting through the tough stuff. And we want everyone else in life to learn through what we've been through and share those experiences and lessons that we learnt. Because, to be honest, people meet us all the time, Tiff, and they say, oh, but Mike, you lost your legs. Like, that's just an extraordinary story. And you sit here and you listen to your story and you go, oh, I could just never imagine. And people say the same to me. But when you break it down, we've just been through two challenges. That's all it is. And everyone goes through challenges of all different shapes and sizes. And the way in which we can get through them is the exact same. So that's what we're passionate about. Yeah.
And I think that one of the things you touched on earlier, Tiff, which and further to what Betty's talking about here, is that we were both very, very young when we got our respective situations occurred. And we started off speaking in schools, and I think it's somewhere where I know that, Ben and I are really passionate about helping young people around the country in what's a really, really difficult age, really tough, even when things are going well. Teenage years are really, really challenging. So especially, with these days, with the amount of distraction that we've got, self-esteem and the amount of stress that's involved, particularly around the pandemic and those sorts of things, being able to add value there, which I think the two of us combined was just a no-brainer. And I guess we get to work with each other, we get to deliver great programs for people, and we're actually doing some good work in terms of helping people to find out ways that they can build resilience and their own capacity to cope with challenge and change. And I think that's a really the great silver lining of I guess what was a pretty harrowing circumstance for each of us originally, but we've been able to turn that into something which is a positive.
Do either of you or both of you have is there a question that people don't ask that you wish they would ask? Like, you do a lot of speaking, we would have a million questions. Do we often miss something that you really love to talk about or teach?
That's the question. That's the question. That's a tough question. I think asking that question, Tiff, Mike and I both sitting here going, "Whew, that's a tough one," because I think from us, probably the thing that we do cop, and I don't think it's a question, but people will say to us all the time, "Oh, you two are just so inspirational.
Yeah.
You're so inspiring," and they'll see us down the street. Like, we'll be walking along together. I'll be running my cane into Mike's legs just to sort of hear that metal sound and know that I'm following the right person.
Yeah.
And
then I get a $25,000 bill for my prosthetist.
We can be lining up just to literally get a coffee, or we can just be walking through the park or taking our dogs for a walk, and you get chatting to people and they go, "Oh, you guys are just so inspiring to see you guys out and about and living life." And I think the thing that we don't get to talk about enough is that we're just two normal blokes.
Yeah.
And whatever challenges people go through, if they're out of our control, they actually don't dictate or define us. So I think that's something that probably would be one thing we don't talk about all that much, but we do hear a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is about that inspirational piece. So it probably doesn't answer your question 100%, but I'd say that's something we're definitely big on that we don't talk about a lot, but we're definitely big believers in the fact that we're not inspirational by any means just because we're getting on with life.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. Do you feel like it almost sometimes puts an extra weight on you that people have this expectation and you need to live up to it, that you are, you've overcome everything and you're resilient and you're this and you're that.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I spoke to you last week, Mike, and I said when I spoke to Jill Hicks, and what stuck in my mind was this idea that we find you people that have been through incredible things that we can't wrap our minds around. We're like, oh, how inspiring, and they're just up and at it and doing, and it's like, still got feelings, still got emotions. And when Jill mentioned, sometimes I just commando crawl my torso across the house because it hurts too much to put my legs on, I was like, oh, we've got to stop making it all look all shiny and amazing. And
Mike is half shiny.
That's true. That's true.
Not that I know that, but apparently.
Yeah, I definitely am half shiny, half metal. But no, I agree with you. I think that there's, if we're portraying an image with everything we do, we want to be able to talk about the real stuff too, right? Because one of the things we're doing, which I've been introduced to thanks to Ben, is Ben's a real country boy, but we got to go out and do this amazing trip in Tibooburra, which is is the very northwestern tip of New South Wales. And I am the biggest self-confessed city boy, so I was just like just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and Ben's just getting on with things. He's got this awesome setup with his truck, and I was calling cattle grids, cow stoppers and stuff, and it was just this amazing trip. But getting out there and actually talking about the tough stuff as well. If we're going out there and telling us, hey, listen, look what we've been through. We never have a bad day. We're inspiring.
Yeah.
Then it's not believable, and it's not the truth. So why would we talk about that? It's really important that when we're talking to students or to people that are really doing it tough from drought, they've had people in their community that have had instances of suicide and these sorts of things. It's about meeting people where they're at, and I feel like there's talking about your tougher days. It's equally as important as about talking about some of the things you've been able to achieve through adversity. And I would be sitting here lying if I said that there weren't days when I really couldn't be stuffed putting my legs on because they're sore, and I don't want to get up, and I don't want to be inspiring. And there are times as well, sometimes where you don't feel all that inspirational yourself, but you've just got to keep going, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I'm the exact same. Like I'll be the first person to put my hand up, and we're pretty big on saying this every time, whether it's with a corporate audience through Legless and Blind, or whether it's a school audience through Real Life Resilience. Like, we both put our hands up and say, there's days where I'll wake up and go, this sucks. I wish I could see, or I'll knock a glass off the kitchen bench because that happens all the time, and I'll just go, this is shit. But we've gotten to the point now where they don't have to turn into bad days and bad weeks and bad months. We can just separate those into moments. But the other thing that I think we've learnt and we're really big on is the fact that our stories are just tools. Everyone's got a story. Every single person on this planet has their own story. And ours are no better or worse than anybody else's. They're just our stories, but we use our stories as tools. We don't just get up on stage and go, oh, we're going to tell you 2 stories today. We share our stories because it helps people relate, and then it helps people learn for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think one of the questions that we get asked a lot, I know it always comes up, people say, what do you do if you have a bad day? Well, I think the answer is simple just for everyone. Well, you have a bad day. Who bloody says that we've got to have a good day every single day? Today's a good day. We're having some fun and we're having a laugh and everything. That's great. But there are going to be times when you have bad days. That's what happens. We're human, right? Yeah. So understanding not putting pressure on yourself to feel happy and to feel, elated all the time, I think is a really important message too.
So funny because this morning I wrote a little heartfelt Facebook post as I ponder in my own little world of lockdown and do at times. And it was about exactly that, because the last couple of days I felt flat and tired and, whatever, but also privileged and life is amazing. But it was like I've been doing workouts for everybody, for free most days. And yesterday I had nothing on, so I wanted to do a workout, but also the day before, and yesterday I didn't feel like it. And it was like realising that we always, when we feel like that, start to beat ourselves up and put ourselves down. It was like, no, hang on. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean, like, and today I got up and I did networking over Zoom, and now I've got a massive day of stuff on, but I got in to the first 7:30 Zoom meeting, and I was so excited to be there, whereas on another day, for no good reason, it was a chore. And that was the thing. It was like, what is exciting today will be a chore tomorrow. If I were to do a workout yesterday with people over Zoom, it would have been a massive chore, which every other day it's been a massive, joyful part of my day. And it's like, let's just let go of the judgment and let it be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Fluctuation of emotions and the way you're feeling, your energy levels and your health at any particular point in time.
Yeah. And I think that big events like what we're going through and what you guys have teach you that. But until we go through something big, we just, I don't know, expect ourselves to have the answer and silently beat up on ourselves.
Yeah, and I think one thing that Mike and I are big on, and we do it now when we catch up, and most of the time at the moment it's just over the phone or whatever, but we talk about it a lot in schools and to adults. And it's more important now than ever before, and it's just the importance of actually prioritising having a bit of fun.
Yes.
And I think it's super important, because I think back to when I first lost my eyesight, like my sister played a huge role in me being the person that I am now, because she was my source of fun. I didn't confide in her in the challenges or the struggles. She would come into hospital, or she'd come into my bedroom, or after school, we'd sit down and we'd just have a joke, we'd have a laugh. She'd try and play with me and beat me every time. But it wasn't frustrating because we were having a laugh and we were having fun. And when you prioritise that, and you prioritise putting your phone down and going, I'm just going to go and do something I enjoy. I'm going to, whether it's putting on a comedy movie, whether it's just having a laugh or doing something like that, it's so important, because otherwise we get stuck in that serious stuff.
Absolutely. And those moments, right, those moments where you're completely present and laughing and having a good time, well, in those moments, it doesn't matter. It would be the same whether you have sight or don't have sight, whether you've got legs or don't have legs. Like, you're in the moment having an experience, having a laugh. Yeah. Like, when I'm laughing, I'm not laughing and going, thank God I've got ankles. Real ankle, like, it's, it's not part of my awareness. So why should it be a part of my awareness if I was lacking them?
100%. And
my brain works in stupid ways, doesn't it?
No. It comes back to that old cliche, Tiff, of laughter is the best medicine. And and I honestly do believe it in a lot of contexts. It absolutely can be. There's obviously other parts of that help as well in terms of support and taking time and sometimes professional help and all that, but laughter can often be the best medicine, especially when it comes to sweating the small stuff.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And particularly now, I mean, could it be any more important or relevant, given that there is so much doom and gloom, and you can get totally consumed in what's going on with world events, and pandemic is just a pretty fatiguing topic. So being able to just separate yourself, disconnect, have a laugh, enjoy people's company that isn't necessarily through a screen or anything like that, super important. And that's why when we get together, we throw the Arabies, Benny catches it, we have plenty of laughs, because sometimes it smacks him right in the forehead, but usually that's my fault.
Oh, yeah, that's hilarious.
That is bad direction. So, but it's unbelievable. He can catch this thing, right? I'm just continually, I know that I genuinely pump his tires up, but continually amazed by what he's able to do. There's not much that he can't do, and it's because of that attitude of just being able to get up and move on and to find out ways to adapt. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, God, it's amazing. Ben, if you could, and respectively for you, same, like, Ben, if you could have for 24 hours your sight, what would you do? What's on your wish list?
Great question. Great question. Tough question, because you're only giving me 24 hours, which isn't a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a bit mean, Tiff.
How much is it going to cost me to maybe get 48 or 72?
Look, all right, go. You can have 72. You can have 72 hours.
That's all right.
He's I've run out of stuff to do.
Stick within the rules of the question, but I think for me, if I only had that amount of time that I'm not getting it back, I think I would get, so my wife, Amy, I would get family, friends, people that both I used to be able to see, people that are close to me now that I've never seen before, never seen Mike, and probably a good thing. But like, I'd get all those people together. My wife and I were about to have a baby, so obviously they'll come along as well. Won't just leave them at home, but we'd get in a plane, and it'd be really, really, really quick plane because
go to Europe. Go to Europe, and then he gets there, and he's like, I can't see again.
No, not going to Europe. Can't waste all the time. But I'd go for a low flight, and I'd land in a heap of different bucket list spots around Australia because I absolutely love this country, love our country that we live in, and it's got so many amazing places. Some that I was able to see travelling around before I lost my eyesight, but so many that I'd still want to see. And to be able to go around place by place, see it all from this amazing perspective from the air, but also land in some of those spots and just have a day flying around, having a laugh, having a good time, but also, seeing some amazing scenery would be pretty cool. And while we're up in the air, if there's nothing to look at, just flicking back through old photos.
I love that. And respectively, Mike, if you had 2 limbs,
I've been
10 fingers, 10 toes, and a full nose.
Oh, God. I don't know what I'd do with a new nose. That's quite daunting to think about. I'll probably just go around sniffing things or something.
You'd look like your dog in the park.
I think that because they grabbed a bit of my ear tip and they stuck it on my nose for a bit of surgery.
You're
so
very
that's why
clever. I'm fascinated.
Hey, can you say that again, please, Tiff? What's that over there? Can't see out of my nose. Can't hear out of my nose.
You've got all of your vital organs, your senses mixed up. You're backwards.
I'm like a patchwork quilt, honestly. They grabbed bits of my ass and stuck it on my legs and all that sort of stuff. No, I honestly thought about your question. I can't really come up with anything. If I had my legs back, I'd probably I don't know, go get a foot massage or something like that. Go for a bit of a jog. I don't know, but I can do all these. I can do all those things. I don't really let it. I think running would probably be, something that I do miss. I remember being a kid, being really athletic and going, always wanting to kick the footy and go around. I remember the joy, the pure joy of running around an oval with bare feet, with grass on you, and being able to just run around.
What about playing a footy match?
Actually, that's funny because Ben. I used to love contact sport, so being able to go and play footy and contact sport would definitely be something that I'd like to do. Maybe something along the lines like water skiing and these sorts of things. But if I really put my mind to it, I reckon I could probably still do most of those things anyway. So probably, kicking a footy again would be a really good thing to do because when you try and kick a football with prosthetic limbs, it goes bloody everywhere, Tiff. It's a pain in the ass.
We've even had a couple of times we've tried to kick the footy and one of his legs has come flying off.
Yeah. Which happens.
Useless.
Yeah. It didn't hit him. I was aiming for him, but didn't get him. So
dead set useless.
But that would be me. I don't know. I love Ben's answer though. That would be brilliant. And I'd love to be a part of that, to actually see him take it in and look at everything. And I'd love to see his reaction when he sees me, because he may vomit because I'm just teasing.
He's equally good looking, Ben. He's equally good looking. Don't be too hard on him.
Hey, Tiff, I'm married. Okay, settle down.
I'm emotionally broken, so don't worry. I'm no danger to anybody.
Oh dear.
This lockdown is my natural habitat.
Oh, lovely.
The other question I had, Ben, what is it like? I remember asking a similar question to James. What is it like for you? Do you see it as a positive in terms of building relationships with people when you take the visuals out of building connection and I guess understanding people?
100%. It's a positive in terms of that for sure. I think the fact that I can no longer have preconceived ideas or misconceptions about myself when I look in the mirror. I can't judge myself on the way that I look. Obviously, I like to feel fit and healthy, but I can't look at myself and go, oh, that looks a bit, that pimple up there looks a bit funny, or, oh, I wish that
I wasn't going to say anything.
That scar wasn't there. but then probably more so when you're building relationships and meeting new people.
Yeah.
I had so many people who knew me before I lost my sight, then come up and say to me things like, Ben, some of the friends you've got now or some of the people you're hanging out with, they don't really look like your type of friends. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? The first time I heard it, I was like, oh, I don't really pay much attention to it. But the second, third, and fourth time I heard it, I thought, well, what does that mean? People keep saying this. Why should my friends look a certain way? And that's when I sort of started to think that we must have those preconceived ideas and those misconceptions that we put up barriers in front of people before we've even gotten to know them. And whether it's seeing someone across the road down the street covered in tattoos or looking a certain way, like Mike and I probably wouldn't be friends if I could see him. You're a pretty tough looking character, aren't you?
Mate, I'm as weak as they. I'm a very meek individual.
No,
definitely not.
But no,
I don't think tough. I've ever been used to. Tough's not a word.
Tiff, to be honest, you're spot on. Definitely echo what James said in the previous episode. It is an absolute blessing when it comes to building relationships because you get to know people from the inside out instead of from the outside in, and you get to know people for who they truly are. I think my relationships are stronger with people because of it.
Yeah.
And like my wife, she doesn't mind me sharing this story. When we were first getting to know each other, and as you do in that cute phase at the start, when you're talking all the time and you're messaging and you're doing all that, and Siri was helping me out. Look, she apparently on Facebook changed her profile picture to a picture where she was a photo where she was all done up nicely. She was at a wedding, apparently looked pretty good. I've never seen her, but looked all right. And I didn't realise she changed her profile picture, so I just kept on messaging her and speaking to her on the phone and didn't even mention the profile picture. She had 3 other guys come out of the woodwork, message her and say, hey, let's catch up. You're looking great at the moment. Stuff like that. And that was her light bulb moment of these guys have just seen this picture and they're getting in touch with me because of the way I look, not because of who I am. And Ben hasn't mentioned this at all. And he's just talking to me as per normal because the way I look doesn't matter to him. So, yeah, it's absolutely awesome.
And she's gorgeous, by the way. So he's lucky.
I'm gonna Facebook stalk later, so I find out. I'm a bit invasive like that.
You can do that.
I have asked the question to a couple of other people on other podcasts about this is like my deep thinking, insightful question, and I feel like you're the closest that's going to give me the answer that I feel like I'm seeking because I don't feel like when they answered it that they really got where I was coming from, and it was about if we didn't have language, do you think that we would, I guess, be a more emotionally sound kind of society, right? And I say that because of the way that with language, we override all of our the ways that we interact and our gut instinct on people by believing their words. Now, I feel like you would have a more acute sense of people's tones and voices and all of those tiny things that come down to kind of like body language that you can hear in someone's voice that tells you a story beyond what their actual words do. Whereas when you've got words and actions and stories and a face and a fake smile and do you know what I mean? Like we can very much go with our bias of what we want to believe and not necessarily what's actually in front of us. Does that make sense, or did I completely butcher that?
Completely butchered it.
So I'm good at that?
I'm joking. That's a really, really interesting question. I think the concept of removing language, I mean, it would be a really tough one for me, not being able to see. And you're right, you pick up, and I'm more in tune to people's tone of voice, but I don't see and receive body language. So if there was no spoken language, are you saying that there's no...
Well, I guess in this instance, I'm not saying don't remove the spoken language. I'm more saying you already have taken away the layer of the visuals, which almost can do a similar thing. So, yes, you've still got the words and the stories, but also I just feel like your intuition in all of the tone and what you're hearing in people is more acute because you've taken away a complete sense.
I think it actually, I think like I said before, I think it gives me more clarity when I meet people and speak to people, because there's one less layer of preconceived ideas and unconscious bias that is removed. There's people that I have met and have had great relationships with for over 12 months before I even realise or learn that they're black instead of white, or white instead of black, or have a disability or don't have a disability, or look a certain way or don't look a certain way. And I think the fact that that's removed naturally in my life is an amazing thing. So I suppose, to answer your question, sometimes less is more, because the more information we've got without actually getting to know people for who they truly are can sometimes skew the picture.
How frustrating is it? Now I'm just thinking of ridiculous things. How frustrating is it shaving your face when you can't see it properly?
What would he know? Look at his face. Full body beard going on there.
He's giving it a bit of a trim. And do you ever just feel like, I don't give a shit? No one can, like... I
can't see them. What does it matter what I
can't
like?
see it. Why would I worry?
A little bit, because I have the attitude of, well, what I look like doesn't actually matter. It's what's on the inside that counts, because that's what I've learned about other people. But in terms of shaving, in terms of all those day-to-day things, there's a lot of assumptions that people make about what I can and can't do, and I can do all the things. I can do all those things, those daily tasks. I just do them differently. Instead of shaving, looking in the mirror, I shave in the shower and do it by feel, and do a pretty decent job most of the time.
You've done all right today. Mike, what is your what has been your biggest challenge since losing your limbs?
Oh God, biggest challenge.
Managing me.
Yeah, no, look, tough. I think to be honest with you, the biggest challenge was always there was a bit of unfinished business. I wasn't always a double amputee. And I waited 9 years to make a decision to amputate my left leg, which was problematic. So I had a half foot right through the arch taken away. And what it used to do is it used to sort of like break down every couple of weeks, and I'd have to dress it. And, every 2 days I'd dress it, and I'd wear this little like sock with a silicone liner, and that goes into a bootie and an orthotic, and that goes into a shoe. And I could never really walk properly or pain-free, I wasn't all that mobile. My left hamstring was... I was mobile, but I was not as mobile as what I am now. My left hamstring was always tightened because my foot was dropped and these sorts of things. And I think probably the biggest challenge was getting to a point where I was able to come to terms with what the future looked like and what I was able to do about that. And making probably the hardest decision I ever made was to amputate my left leg. And I chose to amputate my left leg. There was a lot of doctors that were telling me, don't do that. You need to do other things first. And I guess getting to the point where I was able to make a decision that was my decision, not anyone else's, and take control of the situation. And I understood and had the lived experience of knowing what wearing a prosthetic was like on the right side, and sort of enough was enough. And I look back and I think, God, it was a frightening thing to do. It was complicated. The surgery was really complicated. It was a big reconstruction, a lot of plastic surgery involved. But after doing that, getting through it, and then eventually after 5.5 weeks and 110 stitches in the limb, when I got to put a leg on for the first time, I was able to stand up relatively pain-free, and it was the best thing I ever did. So I think that was probably the hardest thing. And I guess from there, I was able to build confidence and do the things that I'm doing now, and to confidently be able to stand up on stage and talk to people about my experiences, but also the lessons learned, and being able to get to a point where I'm able to share that experience with someone like Ben's been pretty amazing. I don't think that would have come about had I still had that leg.
And so the resounding, from the doctors, feedback was that they weren't advising that surgery. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of a last resort.
Yeah, and
that was sort of where it was at. And I remember seeing one doctor in particular looked at me and he said, what are you thinking about it? The first time anyone asked me, it was not what they were going to do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't their opinion or anything like that. It was like, here's what we're going to do. This doctor literally looked at me and he says, how are you feeling? What are you thinking about it? What would you like to do? And I said, I want you to chop my leg off. Can you do that? What
was their hesitation? Were there risks?
Yeah, huge risks. So it was like a 2-stage operation. I think it was 8 hours. Then I wait overnight, and then another 6 hours to reconstruct it and connect all the blood vessels up, and it was pretty gory stuff. And then when I had it done, it looked like I remember looking at my stump that they'd fashioned when I woke up the next day, and I said, how on earth am I ever going to get that into a socket? There's no way. It was massive. And then eventually they put shrinkers on, swelling reduced, calmed down a little, and then I was able to get it on. Now it's, back to normal, I guess. And now I can walk around and not have to worry about having a wound all the time and these sorts of things.
It just really shines a light on how, even with the medical experts and people in our corner, when we have to trust ourselves and our bodies, and it's your life and it's your body and it's your recovery. And imagine if you didn't, if you had have listened to them more than you listened to yourself at that point in time. Like, what a hard decision, and well done.
It was a really, really tough one, but I think that you've got a couple of options. I think for many, many years my head was kind of firmly and squarely stuck in the sand with it, and I didn't want to make a decision. But then when I got some news I had a bit of an infection going on in the foot, then it kind of like pushed me to make a decision. And I think that the first step with anything you're doing in your life, if you're making a big decision to take something away from your life, then do your homework and do your research. So I didn't just go and see one surgeon, he tells me what I want to hear, and then I pull the trigger. I remember I think I saw 5 or 6 different surgeons for an opinion, and making sure I did my homework. I understood the risks that were involved, and I was able to bring me to a point where the risks, the pros far outweighed the cons. And then I was able to pull that trigger. But I was still shit scared, don't get me wrong. And I wanted to bail plenty of times, as we always do. But I think deep down, like you said, you know what's right for you, what's in your gut. And I think we sometimes don't trust that enough.
What are the things that are an absolute 100% positive that have come out of this experience, that have changed you, and that you are happy to say that is the case because of this?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other questions we spoke about before, we get a lot of funny questions, and one of the more common ones I know from my perspective, and I know Ben would probably agree, is if you could go back and change it, would you change it? And I'm definitely at a point in my life where I wouldn't, because I've had more than half my life, just over half my life, has been an amputee. And I don't really remember or know myself back then. I've learned to live. And I kind of, I think you get to a point where, whilst you're going through anything traumatic or anything tough in your life, like the pandemic, for instance, it's never nice. It's never easy. And you want things to improve. You want things to get better.
Yeah.
But with the benefit of hindsight, looking back at those experiences, I think that we get the most value. And we can draw on the biggest and the most important lessons from those tougher experiences in our life. And I definitely have. And I look at my legs now, and I wear shorts every day of my life, and I don't walk around. I'm not embarrassed of my legs. I actually think they look kind of cool. And I get a lot of people coming up going, wow, they're great, whatever. So it's kind of like almost you get to a point where you're in total acceptance, and you're like, okay, well, this is just me. And when you can get to a point where you accept what you look like, what you've been through, and see it as something that is a source of strength, I think that can be a really empowering experience. And I know that, Ben's a lot like that himself. He's, I don't know, I'd love to hear from Ben. Like, would you go back and
change
it? I know, yeah.
No.
So why? Explain, elaborate.
Yeah, well, I mean, wouldn't change it for the world. If I answer the question this way, Tiff, if I had the option to get my eyesight back tomorrow, would I? Yes, I would. And I will do that not because my life's shit now, not because my life's unfulfilling now, but because of the independence and effect it would have on other people around me. Like I said, we've got a baby on the way, got a wife. I think down the track, if you've got a kid who's sick at school and Amy's sick, I can jump in the car and go and pick them up. Yeah. It's not booking a taxi. It's not organising grandparents. It's just makes things easier because I would have more independence. If I could go back and change it over 10 years ago, would I? Absolutely not. So I think the opportunity, we're always big believers. I'm always a big believer of challenges create opportunities. And there is no way I'd be sitting here on this call today or sitting as I am today if I was 26 years old and hadn't lost my eyesight. I wouldn't be able to say that I've crossed the Kokoda track twice. I've been the first blind person to water ski in the Southern 80, obviously, because I wouldn't be blind, but I wouldn't have skied in the Southern 80. I wouldn't have competed in obstacle course races, and I wouldn't have met.
Oh, what about no? Hang on. The most thing he's proud of. He beat me at golf in 9 holes the other day. The bastard.
How did he beat you?
He did. I played bad.
That's the best.
I actually wouldn't even know if he was just dropping a ball in the middle of the fairway and saying, "This is where your shot went." So I might have beaten him. He might have just been feeling sorry for me because he beat me by 103 shots the round before. But look, to be honest, Tiff, neither of us would change it. And I think challenges, they're always going to happen. It's how we react and respond that's the important thing. And I think they also shape us. I think it's through challenges, it's through getting outside our comfort zone and all of those things. That's when we grow the most. And that's when we experience some of the best things that life's got to offer. So let's embrace the challenges that come our way and let's see what we can make of them.
I love that. As you were saying that, what it really shone a light on for me was how we need to kind of accept and understand it even in the moment when it's shit. Like, yes, you would, if you're given a choice today, you would change it, but you wouldn't have changed it then. But at any point along that time, from the very start until now, if I had have asked you that question, it would have been the same. In the moment, at any moment, you wouldn't have sat there 10 years ago and said to me, I don't know if you're definitely over 26, so I can say 10 years. I was like, what if it hasn't been 10 years yet? But you wouldn't say to me, oh no, but in another 5 years I think I'd change it, you know? So it just shone that light on it for me, like, we got to stop wanting to change the shit now. And
you're spot on, because I actually had people, I had so many people in my life when I first lost my eyesight, that little over 10 years ago, that said to me at the time, oh, the way technology's going, Ben, 5 years you'll have your eyesight back, guaranteed. I had other people that said, Ben, the way technology is going, no more than 10 years you'll have your eyesight back. And I was like, right, you guys can believe that. You guys can hold out hope for me. But I'm thinking in my head that this is permanent and this is for the rest of my life, because 5 years has come and gone. And if I was holding out hope for that, and I put all my eggs in that basket, I would have been shattered to come the 5 year mark. And the same at the 10 year mark, same at 15, same at 20. I said, you guys hope for me. That's great. But as far as I'm concerned, this is my life. I'm proud of it, and I'm going to live it to the best of my capabilities.
I love it. All right, you two. God, I feel like I could talk to you for a week.
Hey, if we can, I'd love to just bit of a shout out to all the parents, teachers, schools, principals, just about anybody. Ben and I have co-founders of Real Life Resilience, which is an education offering, teaching people how to build resilience, students how to build resilience into their life to overcome just about any challenge. You know, one of the things that we'd love to offer schools is that if you go to realliferesilience.com.au, there's actually a tab up the top which will take you to a free resource. So we developed this resource. There's 4 really, really simple tips, and they're accompanied by a video and a worksheet. And then people can go through those at their own time, get a few ideas. The videos are fun, interactive, 5-minute videos, and we'd like to make that available for people that are really doing it tough right now, right across the country.
I love that. Epic. I will put that in the show notes. Do you have any other socials or anything else that you'd like to plug? How, you know, if people want to just pay you obscene amounts of money to inspire the masses and book you to speak, what else do you do?
You can. I mean, obviously, we love speaking, but we love just staying connected. We're pretty down to earth. We love building relationships with people. So connect with us on social media. You can follow us at Legless and Blind on Facebook and Instagram. If you like a laugh, or you've liked what you've heard today, that's definitely a good spot for sort of your daily dose of humour, motivation, and resilience, all sort of combined into one. And we keep everything we do really real, really down to earth. So if you're a corporate, if you're an adult, go to legglessandblind.com.au. And if you're in the education space and you want us to come out and do a presentation at your school, run a workshop with your kids, or you want to access the game plan, that free 4-part video series, go to realliferesilience.com.au, and we'd love to be in touch with you.
You're amazing. Thank you so much, guys. It has been beyond a pleasure.
Awesome.
Thanks so much
for having us, Tiff.